The turbo in this 1987 Volkswagen camper shredded itself a while back, so it's time to get it replaced. I spared you some of the details of me taking the rear wheel off and getting it up onto axle stands. So we have this little fella stuffing his face full of rice cakes. I can't stand them, but he likes them. So yeah, basically access is easy in the inside of the left inner wing there, so we'll be able to get at the turbo. Now this van has an AHU engine conversion and a Passat gearbox in it, okay? So things are going to be slightly different for those of you who aren't familiar with this camper van. But my thinking behind why the turbo actually shredded itself is because the wastegate got stuck. But we're going to take it off and we're going to find out. Now the first thing to do is to disconnect the hoses from the turbo, so we'll get all of them out of our way. I bought this hose clip tool for doing this job. The amount of oil inside that, it really did a number on itself. So now take this one off here as well. I want to try and do this job by disconnecting as little as possible. I don't want to have to take half the engine apart to get it out, but given the fact that it's got a relatively new exhaust on it, I'm hoping that will pay off as well as far as how seized and stuck things are. But we'll see. So the man who sells glass coffins remains to be seen. Some of you weird folks seem to like my dad jokes, but there you go. Alright, there's the inlet taken off. I have the battery taken out actually as well for charge, so this big heavy cable is actually for the starting motor, but there's no power on it. So there's the inlet side of the turbo, and if you look in there, I'll get you in a bit closer. Look at the state of that. Now you can see there is quite a lot of unwanted movement in there, both axial and thrust. So we definitely need to change that out anyway. Now I got a good second hand one. I actually am not putting a new one in. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to disconnect this this oil pipe here, okay? Now I've actually cracked it with a spanner. It wasn't that loose. But we'll unscrew that, and you can expect that oil is going to drain out of there. Now, I fully suspect there isn't a huge amount of oil in this engine at this point in time because I took out the oil drain plug. Now, it is on quite a significant slope, but nothing came out of it, so that was a little bit of a cause for concern. But anyway, let's get that out, and we'll leave this connected to the other end of the turbo for the moment, and we can swap those bits over on the bench. And then what we can do is we can look at getting the exhaust disconnected from it as well. I had to get this oil pipe custom made actually for this particular job. Local hydraulic pipe company made it up for me. Alright, so let the oil drain out of them. Okay, so now it's a case of disconnecting the exhaust. So what I actually had to do with this was with the old turbo is drill through it and put nuts on the far side. So we should be able to take those nuts off, and then we'll be able to get our bolts out to hold the exhaust on, and I actually put a flexi on to allow for a bit of movement. So we may not have to take the whole exhaust off, but either way, if we do, it's just a case of disconnecting it at the downpipe, so at the far end of the downpipe. So okay, so look at I'll get a bit of spray oil there, and we'll try and get them off. Okay, so that's the downpipe disconnected, and it moves nicely out of the way there because of the flexi. So that means that we don't have to take it off the other side of the exhaust. So now we have to try and get there are 4 bolts in they're attaching the turbo to the manifold, and we need to get them out as well. And there's going to be adapters, and there's going to be oil fittings and stuff like that we need to swap over because of the way this turbo is mounted. It's obviously different to how it would be in the normal AHU engine, because this one's over on its side. Okay, so now we need to disconnect the 4 12mm 12-point bolts that are holding the turbo onto the manifold. And I think this could be easier said than done, but we'll...
Wow, you get it.
Well, that's one of them. Alright, so this is the last of the bolts holding the turbo onto the manifold. Then there's just a couple of little vacuum pipes I need to disconnect, and the oil supply pipe. There's the vacuum pipe actually disconnected there now. So we will get the there we go. I know one of these bolts I ended up actually replacing it with a stainless bolt. There's the, actually we should probably label these. I'll drop it down. You can leave it there. So I have to kind of drop it down because of the way this is. I have to drop it down to get at the oil supply pipe. It's very, very difficult to get on and off without actually removing the turbo, which is kind of annoying, but it's just the way the modification is. Okay, so yeah, what I'll do is I'll actually get some I'll get something to label those vacuum pipes so we have them in the right way. They go back onto the right place. Okay, so I literally have the turbo hanging by the oil feed pipe. It's the only thing I could do to try and get it off. So obviously I didn't let it drop. It's grand, you know what I mean. But anyway, I'm going to try and get that off then, and then that'll allow us to take the turbo out, and we can get the old one and the replacement one onto the bench and swap the bits across. And I have to re-index it as well, which means rotating the center housing and rotational assembly in relation to the turbine plenum, because you need the oil to drain out the bottom, so we will have to do that as well. But for the moment anyway, once if I can just get the turbo out, then we'll be that's half the battle. Well, I remembered what I had to do to actually get that banjo fitting on and off. Actually, I had to leave the turbine plenum loose so that I could rotate it back around after I had tightened it. Not ideal, but at least I have the turbine plenum loosened off on it and rotated slightly, so I should be able to get it out now anyway. And once you've done that, then you can get it off with a socket, and it's an awful lot easier in that regard. But yeah, it's a learning experience for me. I have to try and remember all the things I did 2 or 3 years ago. You know, the funny thing is I often get people asking me questions on my YouTube videos about doing the engine conversion and this, about some of the finer details. I don't remember them a lot of the time, so sorry if I can't help you, but that's why I refer you on to people who are doing these jobs day in, day out. I am not. The last time I did an engine conversion, and the last time I will be doing an engine conversion like this, was here, and that was 3 years ago now. So yeah, I hardly remember what I had for breakfast yesterday. So yeah, right. Anyway, let's get that out. There we go. There's the turbo out. Okay, so here is the old turbo, obviously, and it's fair to say it's bunched. So it was making an awful racket. It was spewing oil and black smoke and not doing very much by way of boosting. So there is far too much. I think the bearing is actually collapsed in the inside, to be honest with you. It's like it spins. But yeah, right, look, let's forget about that for the moment. The one thing I do want to do though is I want to see if the wastegate is actually operating. So I'm just going to try and see if that does move. Yes, it does. See, that's a concern now, because I would have put money on that being the problem, that the wastegate was actually stuck, and it's most certainly not. Let me just have a look. No, the wastegate is not stuck. Although, oh, that's just after coming out of the diaphragm for the wastegate. Now, there's the thing, actually. That should not be in there. So if the wastegate was full of if the wastegate diaphragm was full of oil, that may not have operated. It actually probably wouldn't have operated. So why would that have happened? Interesting. What I'll do is I'll flush out the oil lines anyway. Right, so there's a couple of adapters on this turbo that need to be swapped over to the new one. So let's I'll show you the new turbo here compared to the old one. So here's the new turbo here. All right. So now, let's position the wastegate at the top, okay? Now, I'll bring you in a bit closer and you can see. So if you look at where the oil drain is, it's clocked further around on this one here than it is on this one, okay? So and that would put the turbine inlet in the wrong position. So what we need to do is we need to move these around, and so what we actually do is there are some 10mm nuts here which need to be removed or loosened off. That's turning lovely. And we'll be doing that, but what we're going to do first of all is these studs need to be removed because this adapter plate has to go on. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to get those studs off first because I know damn well they're going to put up a fight. So we may need to apply a bit of heat. Let's just make sure the wastegate is actually moving freely on this, and that all is good there. That's fine. Okay, so that's grand. And yeah, oil pouring out of that one as well. That's interesting. Maybe oil just gets into them. It's weird. Anyway, right, okay, so let's not worry about that for the moment. First of all, those 4 studs, get them out of there, and that means we can bolt our adapter plate onto here. Okay, so before we go applying any heat or anything like that, I'm actually just going to soak these with and it's really just a case of being patient. You can do this by locking 2 nuts together on the studs as well, but the only thing is there's an unthreaded part at the very bottom, and I like to try and get it as close to the actual flange as possible because then you have less chance of twisting it off and breaking it. Okay, success. I got the 4 studs out without breaking them, so that's a big win. So next thing to do is pop the adapter plate off the old turbo here, which is this piece, and that will go on to here. Now, it seems that I actually did break a stud putting this adapter plate on because it's only got 1 bolt holding it on. Now, it wouldn't have done when it was actually operating because it would have had the other bolts that actually hold the exhaust on as well. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. Let's get that removed, popped on here, and we'll go from there. Why do I get the feeling this is not going to come off easily? Come on. If I have to, I'll get there we go. I was going to say get an impact gun with a socket attachment on it, but we didn't need to do that because it came off in the end. Now, here goes the gasket. All right, now, so let's see. So yeah, so that's our adapter. So I'm going to just give that a little clean up, and we'll fit it. Okay, so it's actually the following day now, and I'm back out in the garage doing this. But yeah, so what I've done off camera is not very much in actual fact. I've swapped the oil pipe over to the new turbo. All of the adapter plates are in place, and what I did was I freed off the center housing and rotational assembly, or CHRA for short. And what that means now is that I can actually turn that in relation to the turbine and compressor plenums. So that basically means that when the turbo is fitted to the van's engine, I can clock it so that this bearing oil drain is at the very bottom, so that the oil will drain straight through it. So literally it was just a case of cracking off those 4 bolts that hold on the turbine plenum to the bearing housing, and then the four bolts that hold the compressor plenum on. So yeah, it took a little bit of doing just to kind of get it freed up like to that level, but it's pretty nice now, I have to say. So yeah, I mean, literally it's just a case now of actually putting it on the van. Okay, so now it's really just a case of actually fitting the turbo. So if you remember, we had to actually get the oil inlet pipe on first before we did anything else, because once it was clocked to the right position, you couldn't get the the banjo bolt out, which was kind of annoying, but that's how it was. So let's see now, how are we fixed? So the turbine, the manifold outlet is up there, so let's see now. So it needs to kind of come in around here. Okay, I tell you what, we'll actually take that banjo bolt out. Look, I'll fumble with this for a minute and I'll bring it back. Okay, so the oil pipe is on, and well, obviously the oil inlet pipe, the return pipe, isn't connected yet, and the centre housing isn't tightened up yet, but we will be doing that in a minute. I just want to get it bolted onto the manifold first. So this is a godsend, this thing. Okay, so now that the turbo is fully bolted onto the manifold, we can start tightening up the inlet or the bearing housing or centre housing rotational assembly, whatever you want to call it. Anyway, yeah, so there's 4 bolts, which are going to be a little bit awkward to get at now, but there's 4 bolts into the turbine plenum, 4 bolts into the compressor, so we'll get a 10mm spanner onto them and we'll nip them up. Okay, so my camera battery died, the heavens opened, and I had a bit of a battle trying to get the exhaust on again because I cross-threaded a bolt. Actually, I think it was just because of the way it was lined up, and yeah, not my finest hour. But anyway, I got it sorted out. I took it off and tapped out the hole and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, anyway, oil pipes are on. The centre housing is buttoned up. Obviously, exhaust is on. The vacuum pipes are on, and yeah, it's the only thing I have left to do now is to put some engine oil in and to reinstall the battery, which had been on charge for the last couple of days, and try and start it up and see how it performs. Okay, so we have oil. We've got the turbo oil supply and return. We've got everything connected up as far as the vacuum lines are connected. Exhaust is back on, the inlet and the air filter and everything like that are connected up. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to crank over the engine, and I have the fuel cut-off solenoid disconnected there. So the engine's not going to start, and we're just going to basically crank it until we get oil pressure showing, and then once we have oil pressure showing, then we can go and start it then and see how we fare out. Alright, I think we're just going to have to start it. It just doesn't want to build oil pressure for some reason on crank. But I'm not going to be revving it, I can assure you. There we go. We have oil pressure. Alright. That sounded good. Everything's looking alright here. Make sure there's no pools of oil appearing underneath. Bit of smoke off the exhaust, but it hasn't run in a long time now, to be honest with you. It's been sitting up for a good while, good few months. But yeah, it's ticking over. I'll let it idle for a while before I do any sort of revving or anything like that. Just let the turbo bathe in the new oil and everything I've put into it, and then we can start applying some revs, and I'll get that back wheel on and we'll get it out for a drive. We have a leaky injector down here. Whether it's just a return line or otherwise, I don't know, but I don't think it is. I'd say it's probably something else, and the reason being is because there's a slight lumpiness to the idle, and that would explain it. So I'm going to just see if I can nip up that the retaining bolt there a little bit and see if that makes a difference, and if it does, happy days. If not, I'm gonna have to pop that injector out and see what's going on. I'll be supremely irked if there is a problem with the injectors because of the fact that I actually got them overhauled. Geez, it must have been about only 3,000 miles in this van since then, so if it's a case of having to get them out and overhaul them again, I will be annoyed. So and I'll definitely be bringing them somewhere else. We'll see. Anyway, let's see what happens when I try and nip it up. Okay, so there is still a leak there. I'm gonna just leave that be for the moment. I know it needs fixing, but the purposes of this exercise were to get the turbo sorted out, and the new turbo's in, and everything is looking good there. So I'm gonna take it out for a spin now in a minute and see how it's performing. Obviously, the performance will be down a little bit if there's a leaking injector, but I mean it should still perform a lot better. And I don't hear the turbo making a racket anyway, which is obviously a bonus as well. So yeah, I mean, look, what I'll do is I'll dry up the area where that injector is, and we'll just see. I mean, if it's only a return line, then happy days. I mean, that's an easy fix. Okay, folks, we are motoring now. I wouldn't go so far as to say we are creasing up the road behind us or anything like that, but and it's also putting out quite a lot of black smoke. Now, whether that's because of the injector or because of the turbo is not boosting as much as the old one was, generally black smoke is because it's over fueling. So yeah, I don't know. I suppose what I need to do is I need to get into the VCDS software and actually have a look and see what's going on with the turbo and see what sort of boost we're producing. It's definitely doing something anyway, and it's quite smooth, and yeah, I mean it's plodding along okay. Like it's not really down on power or anything like that, you know. But I do feel like might have a little more to give. Oh, the other thing as well is there is a what do you call it? A rocker cover, or a cam cover leak as well. So that's every bloody Volkswagen I've ever owned has had a cam cover leak. So yeah, it needs to be addressed, because I got a fright when I looked underneath and I saw a load of oil around the turbo. It was actually leaking down the side of the engine block, dripping onto the turbo and then down underneath it. So yeah, anyway, right, look, we're motoring. As I said, still a bit more to do, and we'll address it further. I mean, there's no smoke now as I'm kind of plodding along. It's only when I'm accelerating hard. But yeah, look, we're going to leave it there for the moment anyway, and yeah, we'll, as I said, there's always going to be more stuff to be done on any of my vehicles, this included. So yeah, we'll see if we can get things running a bit better now, and then we'll be in business. So thanks very much for watching. Please do hit the subscribe button before you go. I have, I think next on the chopping block is that MGTF I was working on actually. So new roof has arrived for that actually. So we're going to be fitting a new roof to it, and I also want to get back to the Beetle. I bought a what do you call it, a bell crank linkage for the carbs, so I'm looking forward to getting that fitted. So yeah, lots to do. So yeah, I'll chat to you soon, folks. Thanks for watching.